episode 68. My dad is 68 years old. The number 68 was worn by the one and only Jaromir Jagr, and in 1968, Apollo 8 was the first manned spacecraft to orbit the moon. Beyond MD, episode 68, here we go! Hey everyone, I hope you're doing really well today, and thank you for joining me again on Beyond MD. A quick note, I will bring to your attention a financial conference that is happening this May, held by Physician Empowerment. It is the Physician Empowerment Live Conference in downtown Toronto. The dates are May 25th and 26th. For people who are interested in attending, there is a discount code that you can use at phys.empowerment.ca/live. That is the website. And the discount code is Yatin24. That's my first name, Yatin 24, and you can get $100 off the registration fee. Full details are down below in the show notes. I've attended this conference in the past. This will be my third straight year. And in my experience, this conference does have a lot of information that is very relevant to our financial and personal lives. So I look forward to hopefully seeing some people there. I'll be at the dinner on Saturday night and on Sunday, May 26th as a panelist alongside other physicians where you can ask us whatever questions you have on your mind. And I always try to be open, always try to be candid about my experiences. So I look forward to seeing you there. It's a wonderful chance to network with some of our colleagues. So guys, what a week. The Masters is happening this week. I have Thursday and Friday off at home, so I'm really excited to catch some of the action. And then most importantly, the solar eclipse was just a few days ago on Monday. I think this event was really interesting because I saw that it got people together. People were really forgetting about all the other things they had going on in their lives. And it was a chance to really focus in on a landmark moment and to be in the moment. So I hope that you all had a chance to enjoy the eclipse with the people that you love most. We caught a glimpse of the eclipse. It was a partial eclipse from our doorstep. So I'm grateful for that little opening in the sky. I was able to share it with my lovely wife, Seema, and my boys, Rohan and Zion. And when I saw the eclipse, it really made me think that day to day, the stress that we place upon ourselves, the day-to-day grind, these things are really so small in the grand scheme of life. That's what really hit home for me with this eclipse. And I saw some absolutely incredible photos and videos of the event sent from Kingston and Niagara, which looked to be some of the best places to catch the eclipse. And yes, my mom did confirm that my dad was chasing totality down Montreal Street in Kingston like a madman, but he persisted and he caught a total eclipse. So Dad, good for you. I'm proud of you. Now, I want to give a big thank you to people who have been reaching out and suggesting topics. I will be learning about a few topics in further depth in the coming months, and I hope to share all that content with you. One of them is pensions. So pensions for incorporated professionals and also the Canada Pension Plan. This is something that we often put money into each year, and very few of us truly understand how it works, myself included. So these are going to be areas of learning for me. So stay tuned for episodes upcoming. And also, I'm really thrilled to announce that Andrew Hallam will be on the podcast. So stay tuned for that episode. I'm really, really excited to pick his brain. So off to today's interview. So we have Dr. Kevin Mailo, who is one of the co-founders of Physician Empowerment. Kevin is an educator, an entrepreneur, and he has taught physicians across the country for so many years through both webinars and lectures through Physician Empowerment. And today I pick Kevin's brain on real estate, specifically some of the lessons he's learned over time, what some of his successes were, and also some of the negative and unexpected outcomes, because I think it's really useful for people to hear about things that sometimes don't go as you expect. So without further ado, here's my interview with Dr. Kevin Mailo. Kevin, it's always so good to connect with you. I'm really glad we're getting to chat. We're on vacation right now, but it's as good a time as any. It's good to see you. How you been?
I've been really well, Yatin, and I'm so glad to be back on the show.
So Kevin, let's just get to real estate investing then, because I know you've been passionate about this for some time and you have a lot of experience in this, but I understand over time, maybe your approach to it has maybe shifted a bit. Maybe you've pivoted a little bit.
How about this? I'm wiser and less naive.
Yeah. So okay, tell us about how you started in real estate investing, because I know initially you were more about direct ownership. You had certain types of properties, a certain number of properties, but maybe now that's changing. Can you talk to us about how you started, how you are pivoting, how this has evolved, and then maybe I'll just kind of pick away at it because I think there are lessons to extract
Absolutely.
from it.
So yeah, I came from a family where lots of members of my family had done small scale real estate, nothing huge, own a few doors, and truthfully, I was impressed by what family and friends had done in terms of, you acquire a few doors, you pay them off, you enjoy the income, you continue to enjoy the capital appreciation. Um, and and honestly, when you look at the numbers, and we go through this at the conference, and anybody who's interested, I'll just be happy to sit down and show you how powerful real estate is in that very simple model of mortgage pay down, appreciation, and positive cash flow. And so, I was very enthusiastic 10 years ago. I was still enthusiastic the last time I was on your show discussing real estate with what is now the infamous lumbar puncture night, is that episode got dubbed. And this is a good follow up because I'm a lot wiser when I flash forward a few years. So I continue to be very bullish on real estate. I continue to have my own doors, but I came across a few things that made me pivot into private equity.
Okay.
And some of these are about the numbers. Some of these are about the hard realities. And then some of these are about the bigger questions I talked about in terms of living the best life we can be living. So I started acquiring doors. I'm pretty handy. I got lots of kids. They're pretty good at helping out. And so for me, it
Yeah,
was,
get the kids involved, right? Your oldest kids are 16 years old, right? So I'm sure they're involved in some
oh
way.
yeah. I mean, like, I'm very proud of my kids. And I mean, but you saw, like, I'm still, dealing with the younger ones here as
But
I'm
Kevin, just remind me, your oldest are twins at 16, and how old is your youngest now?
7.
7. Okay, quite the range.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
quite
Okay,
the
carry
range.
on though. Sorry. Yeah.
And so yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, why don't I get to that point first off is, once you get enough doors, you realize it starts really taking your time up. And that's time away from family. That's time away from clinical work, which I think we should all have a healthy outlet. Like, I do not think that we should all just look at our hourly rate and say, well, I should just be, you know, working more clinics, working more OR days or anything like that. I actually don't agree with that. I mean, you should have an awareness of your hourly rate, and I lecture about it, but I don't want that to be the sole deciding factor. Of simply working more hours to earn more income. I think we should all try to develop parallel sources of income. But, as you get more doors like I got, eventually you realize it starts eating into your time, because you end up having to manage your managers. And I have outstanding property managers, but I still end up having to do a lot myself, and just keeping up on it. And even just the paperwork associated with it, mortgage renewals, on and on and on, paying taxes, paying bills. And frankly, I enjoy it. I love it. And if anybody's interested in it, please let me know, because I'd be happy to share some of my wisdom on how to do it as a doctor, because there are some nuances there as well that we just won't have time to get into. The other big reflection I had is that I hit the credit ceiling, and we all hit this. And I remember Wing telling me this years ago when we first met, because he had done the direct ownership thing, and now he's a high level real estate developer who's executed $100 million in deals. I don't know how he found time to do that as a full-time family doctor, but he's brilliant in terms of time management and those sorts of things. But he told me you're going to hit a credit ceiling, and he's absolutely right. Banks are lending against your ability to earn as a doctor, not that you're some kind of real estate guru. And and they're really not looking at it as a business. And so there's a limit to how many individual mortgages you can get. Or let's say you want a commercial mortgage and you buy a building, there's a limit to how much you're going to get. It's going to be a personal guarantee, and they're really looking at your clinical income for that.
Oh, interesting. So let me just backtrack a little bit. Are you able to tell us how many doors you ended up with at the peak? And then part 2 is, you said you were kind of managing your managers. So it sounds like you had property management in place, but despite that, Kevin, it sounds like you found that real estate was still taking up too much of your time because of the conversations you were having with your managers, maybe issues coming up, paperwork, taxes, mortgage renewals, etc. But you had property managers in place, right?
Yeah, exactly. And managing them was fine. They're great to work with. They're very responsive, but you still have issues you have to deal with. And there's certain things that my assistant, my bookkeeper, my managers, all the staff I have working in my corporations can't handle. So I'm forced to do it myself. And I would say there's even that element of the cognitive load, right? I mean, you go to work all day long thinking, making decisions, and then you got to come out and you look at your phone and you're like, oh, great, more decisions.
Yeah.
And so I actually enjoy it. But I was starting to see that either I was going to be reducing my clinical hours and really scaling in this business, in which case I'm bringing on partners. And I just didn't know if that was for me.
Okay.
Because I still love clinical medicine. I still love seeing my patients. I still love working full time in the ER. I wasn't prepared to make that trade off. I wasn't prepared to cut my hours, not for real estate. I'll do it for physician empowerment. I mean, I love this, one day, but yeah, just for owning doors, it can be hard.
Okay. And have you let go of a certain percentage of your doors now just to kind of
Yeah,
get
I'm
rid of
starting
that
to sell them
cognitive
all off.
overload? How many, like
Yeah.
what percentage have you gotten rid of?
Um, like I dumped one door this year already, and I'll try to do another one. I'll probably do one a year,
Yeah.
until I
Okay.
get down to a more manageable number. Like I'm not in any huge rush, and there are a few winners that I'll keep, right? Just because I put so much of my heart into them. Built the fence on one of them with my dad. One of them was former family home.
Wow.
Those sorts of things are sentimental to me, and they make money, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but the big issue was like another big one I hit this year, right? So I talked to you about lumbar puncture night, and and so like I had one door, like it was so brutally trashed.
Really?
And it was just, I was like, oh, this will be 3 weeks. And I'm pretty handy, right? I was in there for 7 weeks
So,
this
so when you
year.
say trashed, what do you mean?
Oh God, just damaged floors, damaged bathrooms, punched in walls. Like it wasn't a nightmare, but it was bad. Like I had to redo a bunch of electrical, redo a bunch of plumbing.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
and then I decided like, well, I might as well redo the floors, and why don't we cut out a wall, and on and on and on. And I mean, I love this stuff. I mean, part of me wants to do it all the time, but then I realized like, geez, it was like during the summer months, it was time away from family. It was time away
Mhm.
from the department. I was like, I don't know if I want 10 of these on the go at any given time. So that was the other very personal kind of like growing up. It
Okay.
was the first time I'd really had a place trashed, and just realizing like, man, I don't know if I want to be dealing with this all the time. Now there
Yeah.
are ways to minimize that. I mean, you can take your time, recruit great tenants, treat them well so that they stay, and you're not dealing with as much turnover. But in the end, I mean, these things inevitably happen, or sometimes they're decent tenants and the place just gets neglected, and you're forced to do costly and time consuming updates. So that was the other big kind of like moment where I started to pivot a little bit in real estate.
We're going to talk about your pivot and private equity in a little bit, but I just wanted to ask you the types of properties that you owned, Kevin. Were they single family homes, townhomes? What kind of properties did you tend to own?
Condos, single family homes.
Okay.
That's pretty much
Okay.
it.
And
I
based,
never did
yeah.
commercial because I never had an office to buy
Okay.
office space or anything like that. I briefly at some point looked at buying my own apartment building.
Yeah.
That was eye opening. Thankfully, I didn't step into that one.
Yeah.
If you're gonna buy an apartment building, you're buying another job. It's like buying a franchise. You need to be doing that with people who are full-time professionals
Yeah. 100%.
in the space.
100%. No, it's
Um,
not something that I ever plan on doing.
and,
But
and yeah, and can you make money? Sure. But I just had a guy, he was actually buying truck rims off me, because I'm in Alberta, right? And, his family's hardworking. They came from East Asia like 25, 30 years ago. And, he had 70 doors, but no property management. And he was doing it all on his own.
oh, that's nuts. That's nuts. I would
And,
never do that.
and he just told me, he's like, I'm selling it all off. Right. Because he wants more freedom than that. And so if you love it, by all means do it. But the problem is like you need to have professional management, but you have to manage the managers. It is not just a matter of hiring a management company. You still have to keep on top of things. And so that's the other big reflection, that I had as well.
Kevin, based on your experience, can you talk about maybe one or two properties or doors that you held that were real winners, and what kind of attributes did these properties have that made them really, really good investments for you? Just so people can learn from your
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, I would say location was key.
Okay.
Yeah, location was key. Buying in good neighborhoods, close to transit, where there's going to be some appreciation,
Yep.
is very powerful. Because not only is the place going up in value, it's easier to rent at that stage. So again, it's hard to say what defines a good location, but I've got a couple of doors in good neighborhoods and have been really happy with them, And, wanting to go further in that direction, for sure. And holding
And
on to
just so
those.
people understand, are you investing mainly in Edmonton then?
Oh yeah. I mean, Alberta is red hot right now. It's going to
Yep.
continue to be very strong in the long term because we attract very high rates of international and even transnational migration, right? So lots of folks come from around the world.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful, wonderful place to settle in. And then lots of people like move from other parts of Canada.
Yep.
We get a lot from BC, a lot from Ontario, and a lot from the Maritimes coming our way. So
You've been Alberta focused and more so kind of Edmonton, greater Edmonton area focused. Is that correct, Kevin?
yeah, I mean, it's because I know it, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know where the transit line is going, you know which neighborhoods are coming up and which ones are going down. And so, and I don't know, I guess there are some pros and cons to investing in your backyard, but I by and large am quite bullish on it. My partners as well are Edmonton based and very plugged into the real estate market. So you play to your strengths, I think, in that way. I would say like for some physicians, who are in like extremely high cost communities and they're disconnected from their local network or market, yeah, you may want to look somewhere else because it may be the kind of thing where you are the last to eat, and there aren't going to necessarily be a lot of people to work with or to help you out if everybody's kind of already, got their own deal going on.
Okay, so some important points there on some of the properties that you found to be successful. Kevin, let's switch gears and talk about some of the properties that maybe didn't work out as well. You gave us a detailed example of one that got trashed, but were there other ones that were just not as optimal from an investment
Yeah,
perspective? What about it made it not as good?
Reconstruction condos.
Okay, can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, everybody was out there buying pre-construction condos. I bought for like embarrassingly cheap, like compared to Ontario prices. I don't even want to repeat it here, like how cheap real estate is in Alberta still, very affordable. But honestly, by the time you're done paying condo fees, vacancy, insurance, mortgage, you're not in that strong a position. You're just not. And, now with interest rates going up, a lot of us are in the negative. And it's not that you can't still make money because the place in theory is appreciating, you're paying down the mortgage. It's a forced savings if you want to be really, kind to yourself. But honestly, this pre-construction condo business, I want out, and I wouldn't recommend it for anybody, frankly. Like,
Yeah, I'm happy you are speaking so candidly, Kevin. I can tell you about my one pre-construction condo experience right now. So we have one unit out in Waterloo. And when I was doing my projections, this is one thing I've learned. When you're doing your projections, you have to give yourself kind of more room for error to increase your margin for safety. So when I was doing my projections and my performas, I didn't think that they were going to hike interest rates this high. And given my experience before with breaking a fixed rate mortgage, and I wanted that flexibility. Should I want to sell the place, act quickly, I want it to be on variable. I didn't think rates were going to go this high, but the escalation of interest rates to this level, it totally destroyed the performance of that condo. So we, in fact, as of now, we're about $750 to $800 negative cash flow because, and here's the thing. So you talked about your insurance, you talked about vacancy, you talked about, well, you have the mortgage, the high interest on it right now, and then you talked about condo fees, right? Property taxes, all of that. So here's the thing though. Where I find it really, really difficult, and people asked me at a recent presentation that I did, what do I think about condos? Condos are really, really hard, especially right now, because with interest rates this high, you have no mortgage pay down in this environment for most people. It's all interest or you're hitting a trigger rate. You have negative cash flow. And then right now, at least in Ontario, prices in condos were somewhat soft, had kind of stagnated. So you don't, at least in this finite window of time, you don't have price escalation. So all of your sources of return have been obliterated. Maybe in
Yep.
Alberta, things are going up, but it's a really tough environment to be in.
You know what? Even in Alberta, condos are still pretty soft compared to like single family homes that we already started with the spring bidding wars in Edmonton. The market's that hot. And so, yeah, I mean, these are exactly the issues. Here's the thing. I mean, when you're buying a pre-construction condo, what you're really buying is something that after everyone else has eaten, the developer, the builder, the realtor, everyone else ate, and now you're buying at an inflated cost, and it's very hard to make the numbers work, especially when interest rates go up. Again, are there people that have made money in it? Sure. Is it a forced savings? Yes. Is it better than blowing the money on a luxury car? Absolutely, right? And that is a valid comparator, right? Like you say, okay, what's my worst self doing? Blowing it on luxury vacations or too much personal mortgage or whatever. There's that to be said. But yeah, I mean, if you want to treat this more like a business and a rational investment choice, you really need to be looking at something else.
Yeah, I'm going to pivot here for a second, though. I think that long term, when interest rates do come down, and they will come down, we all know they will. I still do think that in the right locations, people will probably still long term make some money on their pre-construction investments. But I guess my argument against them, if I can be critical, is when you have a window like this, when inflation is higher than typical, when interest rates are higher, and you are eating into all of those sources of return that we talked about. So the big three: mortgage pay down, cash flow, and price escalation. It's a really hard environment to stomach as an investor. That's the thing. And I think that when things get so tough like that, I don't think many people are going to be able to hold on to their investments. Some people may also feel tight from a cash flow perspective. They may feel forced to sell. And I think that's also where damage is done when you're investing in real estate. Because I imagine, Kevin, you've probably held on to your doors for a
I've had doors for
amount
like
of time.
15
Like, how long
years
are
or
we talking?
something.
How long have you been kind of holding on to your investments?
I started over 15 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
been a long road, and it's seen like good ups and downs in the Alberta economy. But yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say about Alberta as far as like residential landlording goes is it is the most landlord friendly jurisdiction in the country. I couldn't imagine being in
That's true.
Ontario, Quebec, or BC.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And so it is probably one reason why I still stay as, under that direct ownership model, and why I won't entirely leave for private equity.
We all like to have mentors in this space. And I think there are certainly people out there, Kevin, who I've learned from you. Other people have learned from you. Others see you as a mentor in this space. And we like to ask people who have done it, hey, if you were going to start again in real estate investing, how would you kind of go about doing it? So if somebody came up to you, Kevin, and said, Kevin, I'm interested in getting into real estate investing. Not that we like to dish out advice, but what kind of information would you give them if they asked you that question?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe I'll just share my own pitfalls and screw ups. And I think I did a pretty good job so far. And some of my setbacks is, number one, I didn't appreciate the personal time spent managing my own doors. I'd never lived through high and rising interest rates. I mean, I remember, laughing at my parents' stories from the 80s being like, that'll never come back. And then, having to deal with it myself. The other big one is, I think there's no substitution for experience, right? I mean, whether it's, the stock market, whether it's our careers, whether it's real estate, there's no substitution for experience. I mean, to a certain degree, you're just going to have to get out there. And at least that's the way I look at my life. I don't have any real regrets in my real estate journey, other than maybe having gotten too many doors and not gotten into private equity sooner. But like you learn, you learn, and then you go through it and you decide what works and doesn't work for you. And it's a highly individualized process. I mean, there are some people that are very comfortable checking their stock portfolio 3 times a day. There are other people that they'll look at it and it will make them sleepless for a week. So challenge yourself to say, okay, well, what works for me as an individual? Because to go back to my earlier comment, it's the journey that matters just as much as the destination. Mm-hmm. If somebody were to hand me $1 million and say, you're not going to sleep for the next year because you're just going to be stuck worrying about this, I'd probably tell them, you can keep it. I'll find another way to make my money, right? Because, if we're not investing in a way that brings us peace of mind and security, then it's probably not working for us. And that again goes across any kind of an asset class that you're looking at. You just like, don't look at the person next to you. Don't look at that person that you share your clinic with, or, it's in your division or whatever. Just look at you and say, what am I happy with, right? Like, how much risk do I want? How many millions of dollars of mortgages do I want to attach my name to in terms of personal guarantees? How much work do I want to put into this? And if it's something you enjoy, like if you enjoy like micromanaging your stock portfolio, go for it. If you hate it, I probably wouldn't do it. I would find somebody to do that. So it's a very individualized journey. I am glad, to go back to your question, that I did have some of my own doors. I will always have some of my own doors because there is nothing like having title. It's a real peace of mind. And, I want to work in them and have my kids exposed to it as well, so that they can develop a comfort with it and see this is a great way to build wealth. It still is. I'm still very optimistic in my portfolio, but I want more balance in my life, because in the end, these are the best years of our lives and we don't know how many of them we get. So we should really be asking ourselves, what am I doing today that makes me happy and fulfilled? And that is not just in terms of investment strategy. That is in terms of career, number of hours worked, how we spend our time, what we eat, frankly. Sorry to just go off on a tangent.
No. This is good. Okay. Before we get into private equity, Kevin, I want to be mindful of time too. Last question on your direct holdings. I want to just get a sense of like, what influences how many doors are you kind of willing to hang on to? Is it basically, how much cash flow do you need to kind of fulfill the life that you want to live? You have you have several kids as well. Maybe you're keeping them in mind. Maybe you want to pass things on to them too. But how many doors would you kind of plan to hang on to? And what dictates how many doors you kind of hang on to? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I just think of myself in terms of units of what the average person has. So like, if I can be blunt, like if the average person is hoping to retire with one paid off home, and then some form of residual retirement income, I would aim to have multiples of that. And you can think of it in its simplest terms, in terms of single family homes, or the equivalent of. So for me, like I would say it's some basic security, knowing that, I have assets that I could potentially sell in retirement, assets that are reasonably easy to manage well into my old age or in sickness, God forbid, and that have ongoing cash flow and appreciation, so that, I'm hoping that after taxes, enough income coming in that I have sort of a base minimum I can live off of that provides security and peace of mind. And then having that sort of what I'd call that base direct ownership for myself personally provides enormous peace of mind for me to go out there and, really enjoy myself in the private equity space and be bold about it. But even work less, spend time in the companies, spend time with kids, family, those things matter, right? So I can't give you a number. I don't really think in numbers. You need to be asking Wing or Gorev, my other partner.
Okay.
If you want numbers, but I just think in this very holistic way, and I try to align all of my investment decisions with my personal life. So that's what I would challenge the listener to do, is say, okay, what, is there some kind of sense of minimum that I would need, that if I had these number of doors paid off and they were cash flowing, I'd be like, okay, I feel comfortable about retirement. Maybe I'll reduce my work hours,
Yep.
travel a little bit more, spend time with family, and be able to do that now,
Yep.
not 5 years before planned retirement. Like the challenge is living that best life now.
Kevin, you have mentioned private equity 3 times. So now we are officially pivoting to private equity. Maybe just explain to us in a nutshell how private equity investing works, and then tell us what made you interested in it.
Yeah, so this is me finally growing up in the real estate space and making a few realizations. Number one, you can't do it all yourself, right? Like you cannot be your own realtor, property manager, maintenance person, general contractor, cleaning person, and not be utterly burnt out. So number one, private equity is where, you typically, I think most of us would probably go in as a limited partner in some of these deals where we contribute money, but we're not involved in running the project. The return is therefore lower, right? Because the person who carries the risk, the person who manages the project and oversees its success, should obviously be compensated more. But it's nice to work with people who are actually pros at this, who do this full time. They love it. It's their passion, the way ours is, hopefully, for medicine. So it's leveraging the talents of others. And Wing has talked to me extensively about that. Private equity also frees you up. Now, there's different ways to do this, right? And I'm not going to get into all the specifics, and we really don't have time for it. But for instance, for me, I also got tired of carrying a certain amount of mortgage debt. Mm-hmm. When you get up to X hundreds of thousands of dollars hanging over your head, and even though you've got lots of tenants paying them, you start going, do I really want to keep taking on more debt, right? And there are lots of ways in the private equity space that you can get involved in large scale projects that are going to appreciate. They're going to pay a cash flow without you being on the hook with personal guarantees where the bank shows up and takes your beamer, right? Mm-hmm. So that what's at risk as a limited partner, let's say, is usually only the money you contributed,
right?
Not more. So that there's a peace of mind aspect to private equity. And then the other big one is the economies of scale, right? Because the way you make money in, let's say, residential real estate is by owning, a building or a group of buildings. But as one physician, you're not going to be able to do that, or you and 2 or 3 physicians. Mm-hmm. But as a pooled group, you can. The same goes with your clinic space. Are you going to buy one condo in a building, or should you ideally own the whole building and lease out to a whole bunch of others, right? Other tenants. And so that's, again, the power of private equity, right? Is the ability to pool and scale and negotiate based on that pooled capital. But there are a lot of pitfalls here, right? People lose money all the time. But there are advantages as a physician because you're incorporated. You have a higher income because a lot of private equity, deals are not interested unless you're bringing in tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then on top of it, there are just a lot of tax advantages associated with it.
I want to get into all of that as much as time allows. But Kevin, let's just talk about, so let's say you are presented with a private equity offering, and what kinds of questions do you make sure you ask in order to ensure that this investment is sound and to mitigate risk? Can you give us a couple of big picture questions that you would ask in this scenario?
This is actually very hard to answer. You should probably get Gaurav on here for a whole discussion on due diligence.
Yeah.
Because anybody can make anything look good on paper. Mm-hmm. Right? You can send across, some kind of PDF document or whatever, a one pager, and it looks great. The numbers look very strong, the projections, whatever you want to call it. There is a lot of risk in private equity in this regards.
Now, you mentioned also that the minimum investment amount will range from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. The deals that you have been taking part in, just so people can get an idea of what could be expected of them should they want to ever participate in one. What kind of investment amounts are we talking about?
Again, it's tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's highly variable. It can be deal to deal specific. There are also pooled funds that people can access as well. I don't know that much about them. I tend to be very cautious in anything I'm involved in. I want to know who I'm involved with, who I'm actually writing the money over to. That's probably key for me. I feel very fortunate in the network I have because they are professionals. They do it full-time or nearly full-time. And they're able, to provide some guidance. You have to be very careful on whatever you get involved in. Read the fine print, have a lawyer with some experience in the space, looking things over. It's honestly, it's tricky, Yatin.
No worries. No.
What I'm getting at is there is no such thing as money without risk. What I like about private equity, though, is that traditionally the returns are higher. It's less work, and there is less risk in the sense that if you come in, let's say, as a limited partner, the money at stake is the sum you've put in, right? I mean, that's not, like a rock solid rule, but by and large, as an LP, it's okay. You put your 50,000 in the deal. Okay, something goes bad. There's major construction delays, whatever. Your shares get diluted or what have you, and you're out your 50,000. But it's not like being out the $3 million construction loan. That's somebody else's problem because they're going to be holding up the personal guarantees for that.
I realize that some of these investments will have a certain time window. Like you may be expected to have your money in for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So I imagine right now it's probably early stages and it's too early to actually kind of see those returns. But Kevin, maybe you can comment on this. If it's too hard to answer, don't worry about it. But in terms of the investment returns, how are these investment returns treated in terms of taxation? Is it like regular income, business income, capital gains, or is there a wide variation? Because you mentioned that sometimes it can be more tax efficient. I'm just curious if you can.
Yeah. And again, it's very deal specific, right? So like if you're functioning as a bank and you're providing, a loan against a project, it's coming back to you as interest and that's taxed one way. There's capital appreciation, there's cash flow. Most of these deals are structured as what we call return of capital. So let's say you're in a 5-year project, you put in $100,000, the project's completed, it starts to pay out. The initial payments coming back to you are actually usually described as return of capital so that you're not paying, income tax on that. It's your capital coming back to you. It's your initial investment coming back to you. And then only once, your $100,000 has come back to you, do the rest start to come your way. So there's lots of different ways that it's taxed, and it's important you understand that because again, it can affect your returns, like what you actually put in your pocket. But yeah, these are, as you alluded to, Yatin, they're typically multi-year, right? So you're gonna come in, you're gonna put your money there, and the project's got to run its course, right? And then there are going to be different options in terms of renewing or exiting. There could be potentially cash calls, depending on because there are many different, like private equity is a pretty blanket term. I sort of was alluding to a classic sort of GP LP, structure, but there are many, many different types of private equity, frankly.
Perfect. And if people want to learn more about the limited partnerships and what that entails, I did discuss that in episode number 38. So if people do want to go back, and I probably will have another episode on helping people understand what exactly a limited partnership entails, because I know it's a term that gets thrown around. And Kevin, you have done a good job outlining some of the features earlier. Believe it or not, I only have 3 other questions. Do you have any rules of thumb for yourself, Kevin, in terms of like what percentage of your investments go into public instruments versus private instruments like private equity? Do you have any rules of thumb there that you try to follow?
Yeah. I'm very, very pro real estate. So just about everything I have is in real estate. I've been very happy, and I've been very happy with it. Like I'm not.
Yeah.
That's probably not wise. I wouldn't advise people do that. Do not do that. I feel very comfortable in this space. I feel very comfortable with the doors that I own, as well as with the private equity deals that I've been involved in to date. So, and again, for me, I look at the returns and I feel a lot more confident about that than what I'd get on the public markets. But again, don't do that.
Okay.
Have something more balanced.
Just to challenge private equity a bit for a thorough discussion, when you look at good public REITs, they are usually managed by a very good team with lots of experience too. What do you think about public REITs? I know this may not jibe with you as much, given what you just said, but do you invest in public REITs as well?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So what's even worse is like a lot of my public market holdings are in REITs. So there we go again. Like if you had to put it all on paper, I'm sure it's like 90% real estate. I think I own some other kind of funky tech stocks.
Okay.
But that's pretty much it. So one second. I've just got my office here full of young artists.
That's okay. Don't worry. While you deal with your young artists, I'm going to be sipping some red wine. So it's all good.
I'm back.
My last question for you was, I know you have goals and aspirations. What do you want in 20 years from now people to be saying about Kevin Mailo?
You know what? If I would say probably the kindest words that I've ever gotten have been some of the people that have come through the Physician Empowerment Program, whether it's been through the masterclass or come to our live events or just even connected with me, at some point with a quick question they had. Like I said at the beginning, this is not about a number. I mean, we try to help physicians build wealth and financial security, but truthfully, if I can help people build a better life, to discover their why around finance and then take concrete steps where their career, their personal life, their relationships, and their investment strategy all align and they live happier, healthier, and practice better medicine, then I've done what I set out to do. So I want to make a meaningful impact in people's lives because I have made a lot of positive change as a result of like taking some of my own medicine through the Physician Empowerment Program because it really forces you to take that hard look at your life. And I'm so much happier for having done it. And I know that for a lot of our long timers, it's made a difference for them. So that's what I'm hoping to do is see some real transformation in the profession. Because if you're listening there and you're feeling burnt out and you're feeling tired, you're not alone. We are all facing that. And we shouldn't feel alone. We should feel a sense of community and a sense of camaraderie with one another. And I think that's important as well within the physician community. So that's probably another big goal of mine is that I will have helped build some sense of community within the profession where we bring one another closer.
Kevin, that's awesome. That's a beautiful answer. I love it. And you already have brought people closer together, but I know that you have goals to impact even more people. And I have to commend you for that. So, Kevin, thanks for putting up with my questions.
No, I always
I
love
wish
it.
we
It's
had
always
more
an honor.
time to talk today, but I'll take any chance I get. It's really
I'd
good
encourage you to
come back on here again.
bring Wing or Gorev on the show because they will go and do some great deep dives on private equity and even due diligence. That's something we really didn't touch on. I would just leave one piece of wisdom there is do your homework in the private equity space.
Yeah. I always tell people that when you're deciding what to invest in, now that we live in a digital age, a social media age, you'll get access to information really, really quickly, and it can be tempting to act based on what you have heard recently. That's called a recency bias. And I always tell people that I think sound decisions are made after a great deal of thought. Like there are people out there, I have accountant friends who poke fun at me because I take a long time to make decisions, but I think most of the time it's served me well. And I think this stuff takes time. So it may take you
your
weeks.
process.
It may take you weeks. It's your own approach and you have to do it your way. So that's also a message that I will throw out to people as well.
Awesome. Thank you again for having me on the show. Yeah,
man. Always a pleasure. Okay. Take care. All right, guys. And again, for anyone interested in attending the Physician Empowerment Conference, you can find a discount code YATIN24, that's YATIN 24, in the show notes and a link to the website in the show notes. So stay tuned for upcoming episodes on starting a business, some solo episodes, and also a conversation with best-selling author of the book Millionaire Teacher, Andrew Hallam, one that I am really, really looking forward to. Until next time, stay well, stay savvy.